All right, hi everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the depth of field challenge. So let's take a look at the pictures that we took. So hopefully you were able to take 3 pictures with 3 different aperture settings so that you can compare them. And so here are the 3 images that I took. Let's take a look at this one. You can see this picture has a very shallow depth of field, and I'm going to edit it a little bit just by hitting auto on each picture. I can go through and see how they look. You'll see this picture, exact same framing, but has a little bit different background. A little bit more of it is coming into focus. And then setting that to auto as well. And then let's look at that last picture. And here you can see a lot more of the background. And so the composition and framing was exactly the same for each of these pictures, but they had a different aperture setting. Okay, so that was the goal of this assignment, to see how apertures worked. I'm going to export these pictures, and if you drag them to your desktop, oh no, I just got an error. If you get an error message when dragging your pictures out, there is another way to export your images, and I'll show you how to do that. So by hitting File and then Export, and then you can export the photo, you just go ahead and hit that Export button, and in the next dialog box, just make sure it's going directly into your folder that you've created on the desktop, and then you'll be able to find your images, and when you export them, they'll all go right there. So it works just the same. I'm not sure why dragging doesn't always work. But once we have our pictures, and let's see if they have made it into my folder. There they are, all 3 of them. But they have file names that don't make a ton of sense because they're just img_2556 or whatever it may be. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out what was the aperture setting in the picture, and then we're going to rename the file that. So let me open up that first picture. And when you hit that little eye in a circle, it shows your aperture. So that F number there on that picture was 1.8. This one is f5.6. And my final picture is f11. Now you can have any 3 aperture settings that will show a vast difference. So it doesn't have to be these exact ones. But whatever you do, you want to rename your file whatever the aperture setting is. So I'm going to rename each one of these pictures f1.8, f5.6, and f11. So when I open up my folder, you'll see my images there. I'll just open it up just to make sure, double check. Yep, that's the one with a really shallow depth of field, so I know that is going to be my 1.8 picture. So I'm going to control click or right click on it to rename, and now I can rename the file f divided by 1.8, because remember, apertures are fractions. They're measured that way, so the smaller the number, the larger the aperture, because it is the denominator in a fraction. So, okay. All right, so I'm now renaming each of my pictures, f1.8, f5.6, and f11, and now I'm ready to move on to my next step, which is to use PIXLR. So you can do this a variety of ways, but what we're going to do is we're going to create a design that shows all of these images and has them labeled. So I'm just opening up PIXLR E, the advanced editor, and I'm going to do Create New. You can do this in a number of different ways, but one way you can do this is just by choosing the 1080p one, and we're going to just call this the depth of field challenge. The reason for that is it'll be the size of your computer screen. Now the pictures are going to be much larger, so when you put them in, you're going to have to shrink them down, but this will work just fine, and you can hit Create. So now we have a PIXLR that is the size of your computer screen if you were to have it full screen. And we're going to take these pictures and we're going to drag them in. So when you drag them in, you're going to hit Add to Current, and it'll create a layer. Now notice this picture is a lot more pixels, so we're just going to have to shrink it way down. Kind of a pain, but I think you guys will be able to figure that out. So I'm just moving it by using the control points on each side, and then I'll just put it on my picture. Now I'm going to repeat that process with the other images, and I have it sped up here just because it took me a little while. But all 3 of these pictures have been added the same way, just hitting Add to Current, and then you can see all 3 of those pictures on my layers. Make sure you can see your layers by clicking View and Show Layers. All right, now what I'm doing is I'm going to draw a shape. So this is just drawing a white square, and I'm changing the color here. And then by dragging the order in my background, I can put it to the bottom, and now I've created a background for my design. So, all right, the next thing we'll do is do a title. So you can draw a box, and you're going to just type in depth of field challenge to make a title of your design. And then you can change the font, you can change the size, just like we did in our previous PIXLR design. Just make one you can easily read. All right, you're also going to add more text boxes because we need to label each of the pictures. So I'm going to label this one F1.8. And then I'm going to do the same for the others. And there's a couple ways you can do it. Once you make one text box, if you know you need two similar ones, you can duplicate them. So by highlighting them, I'm going to put that in a font that's a little easier to read. But what I can do is I'm looking for it now, but it's actually under the layer menu. And you're going to do layer, duplicate layer. And you'll have two of the exact same one, and then you can just slide them over. So we're going to name this one 5.6 because you can see that a little more of the background has come into focus. And then for my, I'll repeat the process one more time. Layer, duplicate layer, drag it over, and I'll type in my new thing. And now I can see all my layers on the right-hand side as I'm editing this. Okay, so I have 1.8, 5.6, and 11. The final step is to do a text box where you're going to describe what's going on. So this is where I'm trying to see what you understand about here. I want you to be describing the background. So as we look at this picture, I'm going to go ahead and put this in a font that is easy enough to read. And I'm just going to type out, as you stop down an aperture, because stopping down means you're making the aperture smaller in each one. As you stop down the aperture, right, the depth of field is going to increase. Right? So how much of the area is in focus? Look at the picture on the left of the dog. The dog's in focus, but the background is not. If you look at the picture on the right at f11 with a smaller aperture, both the dog and the objects that are 2 feet behind it are also in focus. So that depth of field is going to keep increasing. So you can describe it a number of different ways. Just try and think about what's going on as you're changing the aperture. And I want you to be thinking about why you would want to change the aperture as you're taking pictures. Try and think of what examples are you going to need the front and the back of something in focus versus when we need just a very shallow focus so that you can really add emphasis to a certain point. Okay, so there's that, and then I'm going to resize it just like with anything. Really just practice with PIXLR. I don't expect you guys to get this perfect the first time. You can go and add lots of other things to this to make it any stylistic things you want to do to format this to make it look great. And we will continue this next class. So what I need you guys to do is to make sure you save this as a PXZ so that we can edit it again later. So come down to the bottom after hitting Save As and do PXZ. Click that little button for non-destructive, and then we're going to save this. And go ahead and change it from Documents into your desktop. Hit that little drop-down arrow, find your folder, and then you're going to hit Save. And next class, we will be able to work on this together. So if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, and I will try and help you out. But no big deal. We will finish this on Friday or next class. All right, well, that's it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the Depth of Field Challenge. Hopefully you understand a little bit more about aperture, and we'll be ready to take some amazing photos.